Hello and welcome to my third video for my Doctor Who story arcs, and today we will be looking at Season 3 story arc, Harold Saxon. So just like the last two story arcs written by Russell T Davies, it was a word said throughout the entire series. But it was different from the rest of them. Bad Wolf was an interesting idea which I quite enjoyed. Torchwood was set up to be the big bad of the season, but it never really led to anything. Then we had Mr. Saxon, which was a great story arc, in my opinion. That's how you do a great story arc. That's one of my favorite story arcs ever. But let's go back to the previous season, before Season 3. Season 2, Episode 10, Love and Monsters, where we saw a newspaper with the headline, Mr. Saxon. Alright, during this time, we didn't really think about this. We just thought, just a random newspaper. But then, he saw that name keep on reappearing. In the episode, The Runaway Bride, the 2006 Christmas special, we heard a man who was in the tank says, "Orders from Mr. Saxon, fire!" Like, that's the first time we actually caught on to this. This must have been the new story arc that the viewers must have thought first. Like, why else mention this guy? But some might not have picked up on this because it's a Christmas special. But I think people started to pick up on the Mr. Saxon story arc by the first episode of Season 3, Smith and Jones, where on the radio we heard the name Harold Saxon again, and we kept on seeing posters. It turns out Mr. Saxon was running for Prime Minister of England. And we saw posters of Vote Saxon throughout every time we went to present day London. And we also saw a poster in Torchwood. Like this, it was a nice little Easter egg. But let's go back to Doctor Who. Like, it was quite different from how Russell T Davies done his previous two story arcs. We kept on hearing like Bad Wolf, Torchwood throughout the entire series. Like, wherever we went, the past, the present, the future, we kept on hearing Bad Wolf or Torchwood. But this story arc was more confined to the present, which I liked it. Like, we didn't hear Mr. Saxon all through time and space, because I thought that was one of the major setbacks for Torchwood and Bad Wolf, that we didn't have a real break from this story arc. We didn't have like solo adventures that didn't lead up to the big season finale. But Season 3, we had okay, so after Smith and Jones, we had 5 episodes, 3 set in the past, and 1 set in the future. It was 4 episodes, my mistake. And then in episode 5, episode 6, the Lazarus. Sorry about this. In episode 6, the Lazarus experiment, we heard the name Harold Saxon again. It turns out he's been funding this corporation that was experimenting on age to turn the clock backwards to make people young again. And we really did not know much about Harold Saxon at this point, but that was a tear. We found out someone who was working for Mr. Saxon talked to Martha Jones, the current companion of the Doctors in Season 3. We talked to her mother about the Doctor, and this information came from Mr. Saxon himself. So we found out in episode 6 that Mr. Saxon knows about the Doctor. We don't know about the connection, but there is a sort of connection between the two. which I found that interesting. Unlike the last two, which was just like a an Eve corporation or just a godlike being, we actually had a main villain for the season. Like Torchwood was just there to bring a giant threat to Earth, and Bad Wolf was there just to save the Doctor. While Mr. Saxon was something that will come back to hunt the Doctor throughout the rest of season 3. Then the next time we heard about Mr. Saxon was in the following episode called 42, where Martha Jones' mother has agreed to record all of her phone calls from her daughters for Mr. Saxon, like Mr. Saxon is trying to find out where the Doctor is. Like, is he getting closer? Like, that's something we did not know at the time. But then we took a brief break from the Saxon story arc for 3 episodes until episode 11, Utopia, when we saw the return of Captain Jack, and Martha, Jack, and the Doctor went to the end of the universe. Like the universe is dying at this point, and they find this bunch of human survivors trying to get to this place called Utopia, where they believe it will save them from the end of the universe. And we meet this Professor Yana, and he turns out he's a nice guy, someone the Doctor gets along with. He actually calls Yana a genius, and that's something coming from the Doctor. Like, when you're watching it, you're like, oh, I like this character so much. Oh, he's gonna die. But then, throughout this episode, we find out there's not something right with Professor Yana. He's picking up on the words like regeneration, TARDIS, time travel. Like, this is starting to click into his mind. But let's go back a few episodes before this. In a 2-parter called Human Nature and Family of Blood, we found out there was this chameleon arch. This machine that could rewrite biology, could turn someone from a different species to another. For example, a Time Lord to human. And the chameleon arch was designed to look like a regular Bob watch, and Professor Yana had one. We found out he was a Time Lord, and not any Time Lord. By the way, this is spoilers for season 3, so if you haven't seen season 3, click off right now, and after you've seen season 3, come back to this point in the video. So we found out Professor Yana was actually the Master. Like, we found out that Professor Yana, the sweet, nice old man, was the Master, the Moriarty to the Dr. Sherlock. Like, he's one of the most evil persons in the universe. And Derek Jacobi portrays him so well. Like, you have the sinister aspect to this character, who's like you wish you didn't make him angry. Like, he kills his friend that when he was human was his best friend. He kills her right away. He doesn't wait. And he smiles when he thinks about Utopia. It's a terrible, he knows Utopia isn't their savior for the end of the universe. And he steals the TARDIS. But before he steals the TARDIS, the Doctor senses Professor Yana, now the Master, and races back to where he left the TARDIS. During this time, Professor Yana was shot by his dying friend before she died. When the Doctor arrived, he was inside the TARDIS, regenerates into a younger version, and steals the TARDIS, and goes back 18 months, like a month before the Christmas invasion. and he starts to build this identity for himself. Harold Saxon. Harold Saxon was the master, and that's why it was such a genius. Like every time the master appeared throughout John Pertwee's run of the Doctor, he went with this name that represented master in another language. But this was such a unique idea to have the master going with an identity that had nothing to do with his name. No one would have ever expected this. And during this time, Russell T Davies' time, there weren't a lot of leaks in the BBC like back in 2013. Like we found out a major spoiler for the season finale of season 7 and Day of the Doctor. But let's get back to season 3. Like we found, like it's such a nice thing that this wasn't spoiled for us. Like the Return of the Master must have been a big idea that Russell T Davies must have been planning way back in season 1 probably. Wanted like the Masters next to the Daleks and the Cybermen. The Masters, the third main enemy for the Doctor. He's the Doctor's equal in life. And that's why it's such a great idea to bring him back. So when the Doctor and Martha and Jack get back to present-day England, like the Master is now the Prime Minister. He's been using the satellites that he created to hypnotize the entire British public to vote for him. And he's been using the government funds to build himself this airship, which is just technically the Doctor Who universe's helicarrier. But anyway, let's get back to the main plot. And we find out that the Master has been using the TARDIS as well. He's turned it into a paradox machine that will allow the past, the present, and the future to combine, to exist at once. Like if you kill your great-great-grandfather, you will still exist. No paradox would be created. So after the Doctor is defeated by the Master, he activates the paradox machine, which allows the Tocophrane, which I'm going to reference as the Spears because I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing Tocophrane wrong. So the Spears arrive from the distant future and starts to wipe out 2/3 of the human population. Like the human race is in an extinction level event. Like the Master now rules the entire planet, and Martha is on the quest to save the entire world while her family are prisoner of the Master. Jack's being tortured, and the Doctor's an old man now. And that's a cliffhanger I like, to see everyone in danger. Like not just to say, for example, let's go to Trial of a Time Lord, when Colin Baker, every time there's a cliffhanger, he goes like this. That's how you do not do a cliffhanger. You don't zoom up onto someone like this and have them go like, or this. Like, I like a cliffhanger that makes all the characters in danger. You don't know what's going to happen. How would they undo this? Like, this is how you write a cliffhanger, Russell. Just don't have two mighty forces just arrive on the scene for no reason. Like in the season 2 finale. But this is season 3. So in the end, the Master is defeated when they destroy the paradox machine. The Doctor's returned to his youthful appearance. Jack is no longer being tortured, and the Doctor says he forgives the Master. And to this is the moment for the Master when he's like, After everything I've done, you forgive me. Like, this is like a disgrace to the master. He wants to be treated like the doctor's equal. But to him, he's only being treated as like second rate. Like, that must have made him so angry that after everything he's done, all this chaos he spread to the planet Earth, after everything, after everyone he killed, the doctor forgives him. Like, this probably caused the master to not regenerate when he was shot by his ex-wife, Lucy Saxon, who he was just using, by the way. And he didn't regenerate. And that's a great ending to the season 3 finale. Like, the story features a giant old bad from the classic series coming back in the new series. And in the end, like, you think, the doctor's no longer alone. But wait, the master still wins by not regenerating, killing himself. But there is something that could bring him back. Or something that no one saw coming, like a ring. But that's another video for another time. So overall, I thought this story arc was a huge improvement from season 2. Like, they set up a character that would become a major plot in the season finale. They didn't make this character look all threatening. They saved this character. They didn't even show what he looked like. They built upon this idea of Harold Saxon, and they made him into such a threat in the season 3 Potter. Like, that's how you build a story arc, Russell. This is how you do it, and you do the same in the specials. But season 4, let's just say you had a great idea, but it didn't really work out. But that's for my season 4 story arc review. But overall, I really enjoyed the story arc. So on my rank scale, we have Harold Saxon at 1, we had Bad Wolf at 2, and we have Torchwood at number 3. So next time I will be looking at the season 4 story arc. Until next time, I'm the Dynamic Duo.